I know what you're thinking. Another DAW video, there's so many of them. But like this one is like my journey, so I just want to talk about it because I think it's unique. Need a sip of coffee first. Caffeine. All right, so today's video, I want to talk about something a little more on the tech side of things, and that is DAWs, because DAWs are super important. Which one you pick is very critical, not only in terms of kind of features you get and stuff, although a lot of them pretty much do the same thing, but their workflows are different. I've used multiple DAWs over the years, so I'm just going to kind of talk about my journey. So which DAW you choose is obviously a really critical decision, because it's going to kind of be the foundation of where everything's working in. And you also, I can tell you this from experience, don't want to change DAWs down the road, because then you have to reconfigure all your project files, or in some cases you might even lose everything you were working on before if you don't have access to that DAW anymore. So you want to make sure that this decision is made right out of the gate. And so I'm just going to kind of tell you my experience and what I've had and what I've learned from it, and maybe that helps you from making a bunch of hundreds of dollars mistakes like I did. So yay, trying to save money. So the first DAW I used was Pro Tools, and that was when I was kind of first getting into DAWs and producing. And the reason I chose it is because a lot of studios everywhere are using Pro Tools. Pro Tools is like a huge industry standard. It's a really capable, well-renowned DAW, and it's got a track record to prove that it's a good DAW. And so I am very much of the philosophy of buy once, cry once. So I was like, all right, well, it's it's 30 bucks a month, or somewhere around there. Maybe that's kind of expensive. I don't know if I need something that crazy, but I'd rather just be in it and learn it, and then I don't have to worry about learning it later down the road. I can just kind of dive in to Pro Tools and do that. So I got Pro Tools. I purchased it, and I hit up my buddy. I was like, hey, come over, let's make some stuff. I just got Pro Tools, it's gonna be dope. What I didn't know you needed was one of these, which is an iLok. I didn't know I was gonna go need to buy a $50 device to use my super expensive software that I just bought. I have a personal vendetta against iLoks. I understand they help you secure serial numbers and stuff, but I feel like it's more, it helps the company protect themselves from piracy more than it actually helps the consumer at all. And it uses another USB slot in your computer to always have this thing plugged in. Had my buddy come over not knowing I needed this. I was downloading the software, I went to open it, it's like, you need an iLok. And I'm like, well, tits. So I went to Guitar Center and bought a $50 iLok, and then now I have this device, which I don't use anymore. So initially, opening Pro Tools, it's not the prettiest DAW that there is. It's not very beautiful software. I'm a designer by trade. I've been a graphic designer for a long time, and user interfaces are really important to me. And Pro Tools was just ugly. It's still ugly. I just don't like the Pro Tools dashboard. But I didn't get into it because it was pretty. I got it because it's a really capable platform. And so I started to use Pro Tools. So I started using it, started learning it, getting the hang of everything. And then I started to have all kinds of problems. So for me, I was running Pro Tools off of a laptop that was also a work laptop that I was unplugging and taking to work every day. So I was constantly unhooking, cables and plugging everything back in. So it was a constantly changing environment. And Pro Tools, one thing I kind of noticed was that the input-output settings were all set on a project level. And so I'd have something configured one way for one project, and maybe my setup would change, a couple months later, and then I have to open up an old project, and there'd be no audio, and it just wasn't very intuitive to change the input and output settings. So I would sit down to get an idea down, and I'd have to just sit here figuring out why I can't hear any audio in Pro Tools when it was just working yesterday. So on that note, if you had a system that is static and isn't changing all the time, Pro Tools could be a good option. But for me, when I was constantly unhooking things, plugging things back in, just having to deal with that hurdle of trying to just get it working, just to get an idea down, was totally just costing me way too many ideas. And so I was like, this isn't working for me. And I was kind of complaining about it to a buddy of mine. He produces music under the name of Return of Brodozer. You should go check it out, it's some dope stuff. And he said he used Logic, and I was on Mac, so that's Apple's software. So I was like, okay, let me check out Logic. And so it was I forget the exact price. I think it was $200, correct price here. But yeah, I was like, okay, it's cheap, and there's no longer a monthly fee. I don't have to pay a monthly fee anymore, which is great, because I was kind of in and out of it. I'd take a break for 6 months or so, so it kind of sucked to have to keep paying that monthly fee for Pro Tools. It wasn't for me. It wasn't working out. It's not where I was at in the process. So I ditched Pro Tools, switched over to Logic. The huge downside of it is because it was a subscription service, when I stopped paying for it, I no longer had access to my Pro Tools files. And I could have gone back and exported everything as WAV files, stem it out, and then import it into another project. I didn't really do that. Maybe I should have. It is what it is. And so I switched to Logic. And what I liked about Logic, it was a much cleaner interface. The input-out settings were way more straightforward. They were set on the software level, not on a file level. So, you know, no matter if I changed files, it would remember my input-output settings from last time, and they were just very simple things to select. There wasn't all kinds of crazy complex things to set up. So it worked really well for me. You get ideas down faster, you know, it was easy to arrange a lot of stuff. It was it was not as bulky and crazy as Pro Tools was, so it was much easier just to get in there and do stuff. So it was so refreshing, and I was just able to open up a file, sketch ideas, and it was great. And then a little ways into using Logic, I got a Maschine Mark II. And this thing entirely changed how I thought about sketching ideas and creating music, and kind of just blew my mind. So I'm gonna talk about Maschine for just a sec. So one thing that the Maschine software did that I thought was really unique is it kind of split everything up into different like sound groups, and you could take those sounds and make different patterns out of those sounds, and you could arrange those patterns into different scenes. And then you could just kind of sit there and launch your scenes from the device itself or from the software. And you could kind of run everything just off the hardware itself. And I was like, wow, this is like super awesome, refreshing. It's really easy just to layer things and to quickly arrange stuff and just hear different things without actually like arranging a timeline. Because, you know, Logic, if you want to hear a chorus, then a verse, then, you know, then your bridge, B sections, intros, whatever, you have to arrange it, and then you have to kind of like select where you want to listen to and like loop those sections. But, you know, with Maschine, I could just, it didn't have to be flowing in a timeline. I could kind of jump from here to here to here to here to here and just listen to all these different spots and just never have to stop the music and just keep going. And that was super helpful for me. So I was like, wow, this is super awesome. But obviously, you know, Maschine, you know, it runs off the Maschine software, which, you know, it is a DAW also, but you know, it's not like an ideal space to record vocals and add a lot of effects. It's not really designed for that. It's more designed for beat making. You know, typically my process was to get a beat dialed in Maschine and then transfer that over to Logic, or, you know, open the file up in Logic and Maschine, and then, you know, drag everything in either as MIDI or, you know, WAV files and put the song together that way. But I really liked that it had that system where it was the scenes and patterns and everything like that. It really blew my mind. I thought it was awesome. So then I was watching more videos, and I was watching people work in Ableton, and I noticed that Ableton kind of combined the best of both worlds. It had the arrangement view like you get in Logic and Pro Tools and FL Studio, but it also had that session mode where you could load in, you could just work out of a session view, which is basically exactly like Maschines, where it's got different patterns and scenes, and you could launch them and just keep them looping, and you can just go back and forth, and you can trigger your B section, trigger your chorus, trigger your verse, but not have to worry about having it arranged in a window and bouncing back and forth in arrangement view. And that was like super key to me, and I really liked that. And also Ableton, personally, I think has like one of the cleanest interfaces. I really love that when you're looking at your audio effects, it's all just shows you a chain at the bottom, and you can just like scroll through the chain and kind of see all the effects at once, and everything's kind of just loaded in there. Whereas, you know, Logic or Pro Tools, you have to click into each one individually to edit it and modify it, which, you know, still works, and it is what it is. But I just really liked having everything in that audio effects view at the bottom. I thought that was a lot cleaner. And with the session view and the different scenes you can make, that's how I like making music, and I thought it was super fun. And then, you know, once you kind of have all your sections made, then you can just drag them over the arrangement window or just press record, and it'll record everything as you kind of trigger it in session view. So after seeing just a bunch of other producers working in Ableton, I was like, man, this is what I got to be in. Like, you know, it's got everything that I want. And so I made the switch. So yeah, so I was like, I got to do this. You know, if I think it's going to help the process and help me make music faster and better, then I'm definitely going to do that. And something else about Ableton that I like is, just like Maschine uses its hardware to control everything in the software and trigger everything, Ableton also has a lot of cool hardware you can get. So I got a Novation Launchpad Pro X, and you can do it to do all kinds, you know, sound triggers and trigger scenes, to change volumes, you know, use it to play chords and progressions and notes, and this thing is crazy powerful. So this combined with Ableton, I mean, it just makes it so much easier and faster to compose and get ideas down and just run with it and just jam out to it. You can do like live looping sessions, which I thought was cool. You know, I've started a stream on this channel, and as that progresses, I want to get more into like actually performing songs live, and Ableton is great for that. I mean, Ableton Live, it's called live, you know, it's designed for live performances, but, you know, don't let the live performance aspect fool you, because it's also great for working in the studio and, you know, arranging songs and mixing songs and all that stuff. It can do everything every other DAW can do. It also can just do more and arrange and all that kind of stuff. So for me, it was no brainer. I finally switched, and so Ableton is where I'm at now. And so because I also started a stream, I have a template file that I can load up in Ableton where I kind of have like a mic already set up with a couple audio effects that I can trigger on and off. And I'll make a video about how I do all that also, because I think it's actually pretty useful and it's really powerful and cool, and that alone was really awesome. So I can, like, you know, trigger turning on saturators and you know, pitch correction and reverbs and echoes just like while I'm live. Just tap a button and boom, it's on. It triggers a send. You know, you map out the whole file. So that was really useful. Mapping also is a little cleaner, I thought, in Ableton than it was in Logic. Logic Pro X, I had a lot of weird buggy issues going on with mapping. Like I tried to map to my MPK and it would like, I'd do the knobs and it just would trigger funny. It wouldn't work very well. I don't know if it was me or if it's just the way the software works. So I never really got into MIDI mapping with Logic because I always struggle with it. But Ableton, it works exactly as I wanted to, and it's just super easy to map stuff and get it squared away. Yeah, no regrets. I've been on Ableton now for a couple months, and it's just totally evolved the process, and it's just blowing my mind how much more I can do now, and just taking all the knowledge I've learned from the past DAWs and applying it to Ableton. So yeah, so when I did Ableton, I signed up for the suite, which comes with a lot of extra sounds and all kinds of cool plugins and stuff. Like I like that I can, you know, plug guitars into it. One thing on the note of like plugging in guitars also, with Logic, I couldn't just plug, even though there's a preamp in my interface, I couldn't just plug a guitar input cord and then into the interface. I had to run it through an amp first, so I ran it through an actual guitar amp on just a clean feed and then into my interface. With Ableton, I don't know why this works for Ableton, but it doesn't for Logic, but I'm glad it does. I can just plug a guitar directly into my interface and then just load up guitar sounds in Ableton. So it kind of skips a step of having to plug in amps and stuff. And I record a lot of guitars and bass lines and stuff, so it was nice to not have to rely on an extra piece of hardware to just get that sound going into the DAW. So yeah, so I bought the suite because it comes with all kinds of sounds and effects, and you know, I don't have a huge third-party sound software. I've been using just a lot of onboard sounds, and also Maschine is loaded with a ton of sounds. And I've, you know, I kind of want to use up the sounds I have before I go too crazy buying more sound packs. And so I got the suite just so I could have, you know, as many tools as possible. You know, the suite's kind of more expensive, but there are cheaper versions of Ableton, which I like that it is tiered like that you can kind of choose your own plan. So you can just get the cheaper one. If you have a bunch of third-party sounds, maybe you don't need to do the suite or whatever the one between suite and the cheap one is. Kind of is flexible to what you need. But yeah, so that's kind of been my DAW journey. You know, there's a lot of videos that give you different research, but maybe, you know, if you're starting out, this gives you some ideas. You know, I would personally recommend a lot of people just go straight to Ableton because, you know, it can evolve with you. You know, if you do decide to start getting into doing stuff live, I mean, Ableton's really the best for that and really kind of, you know, your only option. If you're starting out, I wouldn't really recommend Pro Tools. Like I said, it's pretty beefy. You know, it's industry standard for studios, but, you know, the studios are running really complex setups and they need a software that can support those really complex setups and, you know, run giant mixing boards and all that kind of stuff. But if you're just kind of doing stuff from home, you don't really need Pro Tools. I personally wouldn't suggest it. And you can just run into a lot of troubleshooting issues, and there's quite a big learning curve. And a huge part of this process is just if you have an idea, being able to sit down and just record that process and get it out, and that's super critical. So Pro Tools isn't really the best for that if you're starting out, but if you're, you know, if you've been in this for a while, you probably already know about this, and Pro Tools is a good option if you're setting up a big studio. I personally hope to never touch Pro Tools again, but that's just my personal opinion. Logic is good also. It's a little more basic, it's cheap, you know, it runs on Macs. It's a good DAW, and it's affordable, and it's really easy to get into and stuff. FL Studio's another one. I actually have never personally used the FL Studio, but if I were to have to go back when I was buying Logic, I probably now would have decided to buy FL Studio instead of Logic. They do a lot of the same things, but FL Studio has a lot of really cool like MIDI functionalities and does a lot of cool MIDI overlays that Logic doesn't quite have yet. Logic has been introducing some features lately that FL Studio has had for a while, but they are behind the curve on a lot of it, so there is that. But you know, if you're about to buy maybe Logic or FL Studio, look into Ableton. It's really powerful. It's just a really clean interface. The plugins that run are very low CPU usage. But yeah, just like do your research and, you know, buy once, cry once. You know, if you think you see something you like, but it's kind of expensive, like if you really want to get the Ableton suite, but you like don't know, you know, like I don't know if I should spend that much money now, but you know, maybe I can get FL Studio. It's just so much easier just to, if you think that's where you want to be, just start there. Because like I said, I have so many files in Pro Tools and also in Logic that I don't even really care to go back to because I don't want to not work in Ableton anymore. I'm just making better music in Ableton. Yeah, make the right call out of the gate. It really will help you in the long run and you don't lose anything that way. Hopefully this helps. Hopefully me talking about my experiences with it helped you in some way or another. And if it did, you should definitely like this video, subscribe. I'm going to have some more content about this kind of stuff. If you have any questions, you know, feel free to ask. I can make a video about that too. And yeah, I'll have some more coming out about kind of what my stream setup is and how I'm getting the audio quality down and all that fun jazz. So yeah, subscribe, stick around. Gonna be more, gonna be more, gonna be more. And more poof. There will be more poof. So something to look forward to.